Namaskar. Welcome to the 23rd episode of Granth Yatra. Today we shall get introduced to a book that is not only worthy of reading by Marathi readers but by everyone across the world. That book is माझी जन्मठेप or My Life Imprisonment by Swatantraveer Savarkar. This autobiographical account begins in the year 1910 when Vinayak Damodar Savarkar was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of life imprisonment. Savarkar, who had participated in the freedom struggle since his school and college days, had established an organization called Abhinav Bharat while studying law in England. Members of this society were charged with the conspiracy to overthrow the British rule in India. This charge and another related to his involvement in the plot to kill the British collector of Nashik in Maharashtra were the grounds on which he was sentenced for the double imprisonment. 28-year-old Savarkar was sent to the cellular jail in Andamans for 50 years. This is the beginning of the tale of a great man who not only endured an imprisonment of unimaginable hardships, despair and anxiety with determination, but also helped others to illuminate their own souls. Savarkar's hardships began right from the train that took him from Mumbai to Madras. Despite oppressive humidity, all windows of the train had been shut and Savarkar's one hand was handcuffed to the hand of a British officer. On the boat to the Andaman Island, he had to travel inside a crowded iron cage, sitting beside a large drum that served as a toilet. Inside the jail on the Andaman Island, he was confined to an isolated cell and made to do rigorous work. In the beginning, he was made to pound the hard outer covers of coconut to extract fiber. The work had to be continued even when the blistered hands began to bleed. If the stipulated amount of fiber was not ready by the end of the day, prisoners were punished. Later, he had to operate the manual oil expeller that is normally operated by oxen, an extremely tiring form of manual labor. The prisoners were made to do this laborious work, difficult even for beasts of burden, from morning 6 to evening 6. When lunch was provided, they had to continue walking while pulling the handle of the expeller, even as sweat streamed from their bodies covered in filth of the sawdust and remains of the coconut, and somehow push a few morsels of food into mouth. Prisoners were not allowed more than 2 bowls of water even if they were dehydrated. The food was always undercooked and at times the prisoners would find insects and snakes in it. Often it would be mixed with kerosene oil dripping from the lamps used by the cooks. Such food often led to dysentery, but prisoners had no access to toilets at night and had to use a small earthen pot in their cells to answer the call of nature. Even sick prisoners would be given punishments on flimsy grounds and had to spend 6 to 8 hours in stocks or hanging from the wall with their hands cuffed. At such times, they could not answer any call of nature. If the prisoner's lapse was more serious in the eyes of the British officer, he would be sentenced to brutal caning or beatings with sticks. Savarkar narrates the sad tales of several patriotic fellow prisoners who were inspired by the love for their country. Indu Bhushan Roy, who committed suicide when he could no longer bear the hardships. Ullaskar Dutt, who was handcuffed to the wall and left hanging for 7 hours despite running a high fever and who lost his sanity. The fiery Nani Gopal, who gave up food and clothes for months in protest against atrocities, and hundreds of other political prisoners who had been sent there from Punjab, Bengal and Gujarat. Through all this narrative of the hardships, what is palpable is Savarkar's objective writing style. He writes about the atrocities in the prison from a wider perspective. Instead of individuals who perpetrated those atrocities, he holds the system responsible for it. When picturizing the jailer Mr. Barry, who tortured the inmates for 10 years, along with the description of his harshness, his narrow-mindedness arising from his limited education, and his greed for power, Savarkar also describes his occasional humane behavior, his insecurities, and the gradual mellowing of his once ruthless nature. He faithfully describes his emotions when undergoing his own hardships and when watching the sufferings of others. Yet, his writing never turns melodramatic. It does not end up in self-pity. Savarkar's older brother had arrived in Andaman jail 2 years before him to serve his life imprisonment. When Savarkar could not endure the pain of watching his brother suffer, he writes, "If I were to endure this punishment alone, I think my heart would not have felt even the 50th part of the pain that I was enduring now. For while I was enduring my own hardships, I had to witness or hear about my brother, who was worthy of worship, go through even harder times than me. At such times, my fortitude would collapse like a banyan tree, cracking and collapsing in some storm. My heart would rend." When Savarkar went through such mental agony, he would calm his mind forcefully and remind himself of his broader goals. He had adopted the objectivity of entertaining himself with a fight between his belligerent senses and the armies of his discretion. To prevent his mind from losing patience at the thought of spending 50 years in such harsh confinement, Savarkar began to compose poetry. As he had no means of writing, he would mentally compose the verses and subsequently learn them by heart. How focused his mind must be, and what sharpness of intelligence he must possess to engage in such mental exercise after working through the day like a beast and surviving on almost inedible food and in the total absence of any kind of happiness. He composed the biography of Guru Gobind Singh and a long poem Kamala in this manner. He never let his mind lose hope and a positive attitude. When replying to the secret letters sent by his elder brother expressing sorrow at his punishment, Savarkar wrote, "To endure such difficulties and to rot in the prison unknown to anyone, even die listening to curses from the very people for whom we suffered, that is the very goal of our life now. Because just as the known fights and the drum rolls are necessary for the ultimate victory, so are the moans and tears in the dungeons and the unknown deaths." He would tell other prisoners, "Today we are helpless. We may face insults today, but a day will come when statues of prisoners would be erected in this very prison, and thousands of pilgrims will visit this place to pay homage to India's freedom fighters." Initially, prisoners who were sentenced for political activities were not even given the status of political prisoners. They were made to do rigorous work of operating the oil expeller or pounding the coconut husk, similar to the work given to thieves and dacoits. Even teenage students not used to such hard labor were not spared. The prisoners went on their first strike to demand exemption for political prisoners from the duty on the oil expeller. The strike was successful. But before such an exemption was attained, Savarkar would at times lose all hope when he could not endure the hard work. He would even contemplate suicide. But then he would calm his mind with restraint. In the same manner, he counseled several other prisoners against committing suicide. Although these prisoners nursed a burning desire for India's freedom and had participated in the freedom movement with a resolve to even give up their life for the cause, several of them were uneducated. They were ignorant of the world beyond their own country and the British rule. Many were totally illiterate. So Savarkar began to teach them basic reading and writing in the beginning, followed by lessons in geography, history, sociology, and economics. However, education was considered a crime in the prison, and of course, no means of reading or writing were available. So the education had to be imparted in secret. In the beginning, he taught those prisoners who had some freedom of movement within the prison or who had been appointed to the posts of overseer or box officers. They were then inspired to educate others. The uneducated had to be counseled and convinced to learn, and at times had to be bribed with tobacco. Savarkar would etch economic definitions, Spencer's philosophy, and other notes on the wall of his cell, with the help of a babool thorn. When he was moved out of this cell, the new occupant would get to learn these notes. Sustaining independence is as difficult as obtaining it. It is not possible without expertise, Savarkar would often say, and encourage others to get educated. Knowledge by itself is lame, but action by itself is blind, he would tell others, and point to the examples of Iran, France, China, and Russia. His teachings supplemented the brave vision of these freedom fighters with a vision for knowledge. To keep the communication channels open, he started the practice of Sunday meetings on the run. Participants in these meetings had to be alert and run for cover the moment any guard arrived. Savarkar writes, "By momentarily arresting the downward fall, those prison meetings would uplift our minds to new heights and turn it towards glory." Savarkar inspired nationalism in the minds of those prisoners who had joined the revolution out of their hatred for the British. Most of them were unaware of India's geography, history, or its social and economic conditions. Savarkar educated them on those topics and tried to place such trained prisoners to the posts of overseers. Through them, he established an unofficial organization within and outside the prison. The free population of Andaman Island and those prisoners who were given work outside the prison were made members of this organization. Savarkar started secretly importing books and newspapers through these members. Since face-to-face meetings to plan these activities were not possible, the prisoners developed a Morse code language of the sound of their chains. Communication was also achieved through slips of paper moved around through garbage trolleys, coconut trash, and toilet pipes. The prisoners' organization, several petitions, and 3 strikes resulted in some concessions. Yet, to achieve reforms in all Indian prisons, it was necessary to make common Indians aware of the conditions in the prisons. A plan was drawn, and a political prisoner, Hotilal, wrote a letter which was smuggled out to Surendranath Banerjee, the editor of the Bengali Daily in Calcutta. When this letter was published, there was a popular demand for granting concessions to the prisoners of Andaman. Public opinion began to be formed on this issue. The prisoners got the permission to order books. Gradually, Savarkar's efforts resulted in a library of 1500 books in English, Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, Punjabi, Tamil, and Telugu. Some prisoners attained the caliber of professors through continuous education. Let us hear from Dr. Shubha Sathe about Savarkar's efforts for the preservation of language and culture.
स्वातंत्र्यवीर विनायक दामोदर सावरकरांच्या जीवनातलं अंदमान पर्व म्हणजे अंदमानच्या अंधार कोठडीमध्ये मातृभूमीच्या स्वतंत्रतेसाठी तपस्या करण्याकरता वस्तीला येऊन राहिलेल्या एका तेजाची उज्ज्वल जीवनगाथाच. ही जीवनगाथा आपल्यासमोर उलगडते माझी जन्मठेपमधून. माझे जन्मठेपमधून आपल्याला भेटतात साहित्यिक सावरकर, कुटुंबवत्सल सावरकर, क्रांतिकारक सावरकर, शिक्षक, तत्त्वज्ञ, अभ्यासक, चिंतक, द्रष्टे सावरकर, तसंच योगी, स्थितप्रज्ञ सावरकर, समाजसुधारक सावरकर आणि हिंदी भाषाभिमानी सावरकर. अंदमानात आल्यानंतर सावरकरांच्या असं लक्षात आलं की हिंदू बंदिवानांचा जास्तीत जास्त छळ करावा यासाठी मुसलमान जमादारांना वरिष्ठ अधिकाऱ्यांकडून उत्तेजन मिळतं आहे. तसंच हिंदू आणि मुस्लिम बंदिवानांमध्ये उघड पक्षपात होतो आहे. मुसलमान बंदी हिंदू बंदिवानांना जबरदस्ती बाटवतायत, त्यांचं धर्मांतर घडवून आणतायत. हिंदू बंदिवानाच्या ताटामध्ये मुसलमान बंदिवान आपल्या ताटातलं अन्न टाकायचे आणि ते त्यांनी खाल्लं की म्हणायचे आता तू बाटलास, तुझं धर्मांतर झालं. मग इतर हिंदू बंदिवान त्या बाटलेल्या हिंदू बंदिवानाला आपल्या शेजारी आपल्या पंक्तीस बसू देत नसत, कारण त्याच्या स्पर्शाने सुद्धा विटाळ होतो अशी त्यांची समजूत झालेली. हे पाहिल्यावर हिंदूंच्या जातीय जीवनाचा बळी दिला जाऊ नये या भूमिकेतून सावरकरांनी अंदमानमध्ये शुद्धी कार्य सुरू केलं. सावरकर म्हणतात, शुद्धी बहिष्कृतांची नाही तर अशा निरपराधी स्वजनास बहिष्कृत करणाऱ्या बहिष्कर्त्यांचीच शुद्धी केली पाहिजे. धर्माप्रमाणेच भाषा आणि लिपी यावरही परकीय आक्रमण चालू होतं. अंदमानातील बहुसंख्य लोकांची भाषा हिंदी असूनसुद्धा प्राथमिक शाळेतून उर्दू भाषा आणि पर्शियन लिपी शिकवली जात होती. अंदमानात हिंदू संस्कृती जिवंत ठेवायची असेल तर हिंदी भाषा आणि नागरी लिपी याचं शिक्षण देणं अत्यावश्यक आहे, अपरिहार्य आहे. यासाठी सावरकरांनी तिथे हिंदीचा प्रचार केला. सावरकरांनी अंदमानमध्ये जे भोगलं, तिथे जे कार्य केलं, ते माझी जन्मठेपमधून वाचल्यानंतर माझ्या देशासाठी कुठल्याही संकटात उडी टाकायला मी सिद्ध आहे असा तरुण निर्माण झाला पाहिजे, ही सावरकरांची अपेक्षा होती. या ज्येष्ठ समीक्षक आणि अखिल भारतीय साहित्य संमेलनाचे माजी अध्यक्ष डॉक्टर द.भी. कुलकर्णी यांनी या ग्रंथाबद्दल असे गौरवोद्गार काढलेले आहे की मराठीतून नोबेल पारितोषिक देण्याजोगा एकमेव ग्रंथ म्हणजे माझी जन्मठेप.
Some concessions were attained, but atrocities had not ended. Bhan Singh, an old Sikh political prisoner, died after being thrashed for a flimsy reason. A young political prisoner was caned when he could not produce 2 pounds of coconut fiber. Publication of several letters sent to India protesting these atrocities and the 3 strikes by political prisoners resulted in creating a favorable public opinion. The Rashtriya Sangh sent a petition signed by more than 70,000 people to the government. Finally, a committee was established for prison inspection. During the visit of this committee to Andaman, Savarkar gave in writing that he and his associates would adopt peaceful means if the recent reforms in India led to further reforms. All this resulted in 100 to 200 political prisoners and 400 to 500 non-political prisoners receiving pardons and getting released. They all had to sign agreements stating that they would not take part in any political or revolutionary activities, and if caught in any such activity, would undergo the remaining imprisonment of their original punishment. Yet, the Savarkar brothers and 30 other political prisoners were not released. The Savarkar brothers were not even allowed to work outside the prison despite completing 10 and more years of imprisonment. A few days after this, Savarkar fell ill. He spent the next 2 years on the hospital bed fighting death. He gradually recovered, but by then his older brother was sick with tuberculosis and dysentery. Savarkar continued to write one petition after other to allow him to work outside the prison. Finally, he was appointed the foreman on the oil storehouse. He could now openly carry out his educational and social reforms activities. He continued to shape public opinion through acts such as eating with an untouchable and encouraging a mass public fast after the death of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. In India, the Indian National Congress passed a resolution demanding the release of Savarkar brothers and Ratan Chaudhary. Finally, the Savarkar brothers were released from the Andaman prison in 1921 and taken to separate prisons. All concessions attained in Andaman were taken away and they were again confined to solitary imprisonment. Savarkar was shifted through Alipur, Ratnagiri and Yerawada prisons, during which time he once again had the urge to commit suicide. But he strengthened his mind through an effort of will and engaged himself in writing. It was Savarkar's broad vision of life that gave him the mental strength to deal with several difficult situations during the 14 years of his imprisonment. Watching the boat glide effortlessly on the waters of the Andaman Sea on his first arrival there, he had been thrilled to realize man's triumph over the inanimate, and he dreamt of a future where man would conquer his mind. He longed for the day when man would conquer the demons in his mind and the oppressor and the oppressed would no longer exist, when man would be free of the chains of servitude and yet be bound by the bonds of mutual love. He longed for such a bright future. The book Majhi Janmatep provides a great opportunity to read about the struggles of a dazzling Indian freedom fighter in his own words. After reading the fight put up by him and his fellow freedom fighters 100 years ago, the reader would never be tormented by despair. This tale is a shining example of positive action despite extremely adverse circumstances. In the next episode, we shall be introduced to a new form of novel. Until then, keep reading.